I want to talk about my hot topic. A lot of things Kennedy's been doing and his administration is doing, just home run, and home run after home run after home run. One of the topics is, pardon the pun, we're having impact speed here. There's a topic we cannot avoid, and this is the VAERS system. This is this broken vaccine adverse event reporting system that we're told is the best in the world. We know it's not. Here's an article from Stat News. Now, Stat News typically slanted with their reporting when it comes to vaccine reporting. This is from almost a year ago in April. RFK Jr. plans changes to vaccine side effect reporting system. A lot of people want this. But look at this first line. It says, while the general idea of improving the system is uncontroversial, this cuts across party lines, Del. No one's saying don't fix this system. Everyone knows. Kennedy has exaggerated the extent to which side effects of vaccination go unrecorded, according to researchers. He's saying only about 1% are reported, and he wants to automate it. Well, Stat News destroys its own premise just a couple paragraphs down because it quotes something we quote all the time. Thank you, Stat News. You're doing our job for us. It says, an analysis conducted for the Agency of Health for Healthcare Research and Quality from 2006 to 2009 found that using an automated system could lead to more suspected adverse events being flagged to doctors. They estimated that fewer than 1% of vaccine adverse events are reported. So I don't know who's exaggerating it because fewer than 1%, as we've always talked about in this show, seems pretty low. And right. Why wouldn't you want to capture a couple more of those so you can have a safer vaccine program? I'm not working for the pro-vaxxers here, and this is just common sense. So fast forward now to Mother Jones, another outlet that's been somewhat adversarial to people that want their own decisions around their bodies, especially when it comes to vaccines. But they just posted this article here, and they're saying health department will mine unverified vaccine injury claims with new AI tools. So HHS has budgeted into their 2025 budget, the final quarter, that they're going to start using AI to sweep through these adverse reporting systems to figure out what's going on. So that's a positive thing for people that really want to understand the safety of vaccines instead of just blindly putting them out there. And what's one of the issues here is researchers, it's no big secret here. The vaccines are tested extremely poorly, as ICANN and our lawyers have shown that they're not tested against placebo controls. They're tested against other vaccines. They're grandfathered in. They have very, very small safety windows that they look for, 3-4 days after injection. And then after that, you're on your own. We'll let VAERS catch it. So the people are the fourth phase of testing. They're the final phase of testing. And maybe if this broken system signals something, we'll look at it. Well, researchers are now starting to look at this. This is kind of the entire sea change that Kennedy has put forward is looking at vaccine safety. So here's a new research looking at the Tdap vaccine. And you can look at this study. This is a risk signal assessment. So these researchers are going into the VAERS system and looking at the Tdap vaccine use alone by pregnant women. So this is, they're calling it a pharmacoepidemiological study. So this study, they're using calculations that are used to look into these systems, the VAERS systems. FDA has one called FAERS for drug reporting. These are systems that have been online for a long time. And this is what researchers did. This is kind of how they approach this. They said, despite global recommendations for maternal tetanus, diphtheria, acellular pertussis, Tdap vaccination to protect neonates, safety concerns persist regarding pregnancy-specific adverse events. So right there, the researchers are saying, look, this thing's been universally recommended, but there's still safety issues. And something's wrong with this program because I'm not sure we're catching them all. So we have to do a study now to just look into this. This is what they did. They said, we analyzed 870 pregnancy-related reports, that's through VAERS. 128 were serious from 20,358 Tdap submissions using disproportionality analysis. They call it reporting odds ratio. So basically, based on the overall reporting patterns of this database, are there higher expected reports of harms for certain outcomes for these vaccines, in this case, Tdap in pregnant women? Well, look what they found. This is their results. They said 71.9% of adverse events occurred within 30 days post-vaccination. Well, that's good to know. No adverse events of maternal death. That's really good news that were found. But they did find this, a strong safety signal on stillbirth. Now, it's a reporting odds ratio of 285. Now, a reporting odds ratio of, say, 0 would mean there's nothing to see here. A reporting odds ratio of, say, 2 would say this signals about 2 times more than what we normally see, three times more. This is 285 98.77. If you go back to these results, for stillbirth, a signal for stillbirth in VAERS for Tdap pregnancy vaccines given maternally. So let's go. Preterm delivery.
285 times more? 285 times the amount.
285.77, yes.
Wow.
And so we go on. Now, preterm delivery, probably not going to want that. Reporting odds ratio 196.8, and fetal death, definitely don't want that. Reporting odds ratio 140.83 were found via disproportionality from a passive surveillance system, which required further validation in active surveillance
So just
studies.
to be clear, do I read that sentence as fetal death is 140 times more likely or more than we would likely expect to be seeing it, right?
In the VAERS reporting system. So that's the caveat here. So you go into this study and they'll say, well, because we don't really know how many people have in total have taken this vaccine, we don't know if that's a bad thing, a good thing, a high number, a low number. But within this reporting system, there's a signal specifically with Tdap given maternally for these three signals especially. These are the high watermarks. These are really coming out here in this study. They're saying this is an issue. It appears to be an issue. We have this broken system. We all know it's broken, and we're using the garbage we have to study. And what we're using in this garbage system, these are major signals that are coming up. So these researchers, they conclude with saying, look, we need to validate this with active surveillance studies. We need it now. And this study here, if Kennedy wants to improve the VAERS system, they should walk out and do an entire press conference right now. Jay Bhattacharya just took the head of the CDC, should come out and do a press conference on this study and say, this is why we need a better VAERS system. Because researchers are going into this broken system and they're seeing this. Now I want to show an actual image from the study. I highlighted some of the things here that just jump out. You can see here, huge issues, stillbirth, premature delivery, talked about that, fetal death. But you can see down in there in the middle, premature labor, gestational diabetes. You're looking at 230 reporting odds ratio. At the bottom there, gestational hypertension, 161 times reporting odds ratio, placental disorder. So a lot of signals happening here. And again, this is what happens when you use the population as an open air experiment and just say, don't worry, if anything happens, VAERS will signal it. Let's just sit around and wait for this system to underreport. So if you want to, and here's a little pro tip for the community that really enjoys pharmaceutical products that come from a needle. If you want the population to trust these products, if you want to end vaccine hesitancy, this VAERS system is not going to do it. People aren't going to walk into their doctor's office knowing that if they get this vaccine, and they can't sue pharmaceutical companies, that this system is going to tell them if these things are, this system informs the government, informs the doctors, and it's not doing its job. So what's the next thing we're supposed to do as the public wanting, vaccine safety? Well, we can sue the government like we have. We can put FOIA requests to the government and ask for the vaccine injury data. What have these manufacturers given you that you haven't shown the public? Well, they did that in Canada. They just did that in Canada for childhood vaccines. This is the headline. Health Canada seals vaccine injury records for 15 years. Well, it kind of reminds me of what Aaron Siri and his lawyers did during COVID, trying to get the COVID information from that vaccine. This is the Reuters headline at that time. FDA wants 55 years to process FOIA requests over vaccine data. So we've seen that game before.
So now, Canada let me understand that, because I don't want to blow past that. They're locking away all of their vaccine injury data so that no one can see it for 15 years, right after forced vaccinating their entire country, having trucker strikes and everything, saying this is outrageous, we need to rob your bank accounts, we need to shut you down, just rob you of civil liberties because this vaccine is so important and this vaccine is so safe. And now, right at the time where the data is pouring in and we can actually get to the bottom of what happened here, Canada's going to say, hands off, you're not allowed to see that data. Boy, that does not look very good to me. That does not look like you like what you're seeing in that data, because it sure seems like if you saved lives, you'd be like rushing that out to show the world how great that vaccine program worked out.
And here's the issue I have with people that want to bash Kennedy. These are the people that are fine with what the government's doing in other countries. So is that radical transparency that's happening in Canada right now? That's my question for you. So where are we left? Well, we're left finally, obviously, with our own decision making and our family. But you go to your doctor and you have a conversation with your doctor. You say, door closes, doctor-patient relationship, the most sacred thing in medicine, Hippocratic oath. and you say, Doc, tell me what side effects are going on here. What should I look for these vaccines? Would you take all of these vaccines at once or give those to your child if that was your child? And the doctor can tell you the truth about those things. Well, here's a Politico article that they're trying to make stick. RFK Jr.'s allies are trying to free anti-vaccine doctors to speak their minds. I can barely read that title because my brain does not want to make this reality. So you go into this article and they quote some people in here. One of them is a public health lawyer at Georgetown University. He says, this is part of a judicial assault on science and public health that basically weaponizes the COVID-19 pandemic for political and ideological gains. This is Lawrence Gostin from Georgetown University. I thought the COVID-19 pandemic itself, just because of the nature of it, was weaponized for political and ideological games. That's why we're moving away from it right now. But then Politico just puts a fine point on it and says this: a Supreme Court decision in favor of broad speech protections for physicians could have far-reaching implications, possibly bolstering Kennedy's efforts to dismantle long-established public health practices by permitting doctors to speak more freely with patients and to the public, but about approaches to healthcare that are outside the mainstream. This includes whether to recommend vaccination.
Now, at the heart of this, Jeffrey, is this conversation that the Supreme Court may take up. It's really on should these licensing boards be allowed to take away your license for speaking your truth in what you're seeing? Is that the heart of what they're looking at here? That we look at COVID. We saw those doctors who were having so much success with hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, who have had their licenses either under threat or taken away. Doctors like Paul Merrick, who was in tears as he spoke at the Ron Johnson hearing. They took away the drugs that were working for me. He had the highest success rate of survival in his ICU. As he said, they made me just watch my patients die. And we put doctors in a position where they were not allowed to practice medicine the way that they have been taught to do it, which is the patient comes first. I'm going to think outside the box, since the entire world is saying they don't know how to treat this disease. Yet those that did treat, those that tried things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, had their licenses taken away based on they don't have the right to free speech. That's the heart of what this Politico is against. They don't want your doctor to be thinking outside the box. They don't want them to be allowed to break free of the narrative, which is there is no drug that works. We're all going to have to die until the vaccine comes a year from now. Shame on Politico. And you want to talk about proving that you're a propagandist shill for an authoritarian system, that article does it. And if anyone reads your trash any longer, then you get what you expect.
And living through COVID, you want a medical class. This is what we learned. This is one of the lessons we should have learned as a society. You want a medical community that practices the Hippocratic Oath with rugged individualism. What can they do to protect their patients? Doesn't matter what the government's telling them. You want people, you want ingenuity, you want invention, creativity from your doctors. You don't want one size fits all. So what happens in this vaccine conversation?
I hate to interrupt you. You want a second opinion. Second opinions only exist if you're allowed to, have a different opinion than the last person you went to. If you take away my right to express, I have a different perspective on this, then you take away one of the central tenets of medicine and health as we know it. And by the way, this shows you that Politico doesn't want you as a doctor. They don't trust you. They think you're a bunch of morons. This is what's happening to your medical industry. Let's be clear. They want the Supreme Court to tell you, stop thinking, you're a fool, you're an idiot, do what your boss says. This is a bureaucracy. This is not health. This is not your investigation. You can't be trusted. That's what this is really about. And doctors should be coming out against this article.
Absolutely. And so what's the public left to do? So you have a VAERS system that's broken. You have basically a journalist class that wants to silence your entire medical community and the doctors. And you also have a legal class that wants to do that. And they have no problem doing that. So you're left with this. You're left with, whoa, strange, vaccine hesitancy. So here's out of a JAMA publication that just came out making headlines looking at exemptions. Non-medical vaccine exemptions are increasing. That's for children. And here's the University of Michigan poll. Why aren't more older adults getting the flu or COVID shots? And it goes into this infographic here. About a third of them almost say they don't think they need it. And then I guess we're doing our job for people to question these vaccines and the terrible science that underpins them. A lot of people are worried about side effects. A lot of people don't believe the vaccine is effective. So safety, efficacy, you see that. And then some people, it didn't even cross their mind, didn't even think of it. So people are just living in bliss didn't even know vaccines existed, I guess.
Where do you
but
find
the bottom
those
line
people?
here, yeah, the bottom line, one of the bills that is going through, I did a show last week with Don Richardson from NBIC and talking about all the bills, over 700 plus vaccine related bills, just showing this push-pull that's happening in the United States right now. One of the most really, I think, loved bills is this one here, Rand Paul, S3853. And this is the article that was written on this bill. Hold Big Pharma accountable. Vax giants are sure to be nervous about Rand Paul's new bill. This ends the liability exemption. So they're allowing individuals to sue pharma. This is in Congress. This is at the federal level. They're trying to just exit this bad idea out at this point for people that trying to sue or trying to get damages for harms or deaths. They want people to actually be able to do like any other product in the United States. So that's what Rand Paul is doing. And again, I don't think you can find really anybody on the street that would think this is a bad idea. This bill cuts across political lines. It cuts across all types of ideologies in America. It aligns a lot of people behind it. So this seems like this may have some wind behind it.
Well, we should all be watching any individual that votes against this push by Rand Paul to put liability back on the manufacturer. If you believe in these products, if you're lining up for 72 of these things, it should bother you that they want to be able to injure you and not be sued. Because remember, they injured you with drugs every day. All those side effects that are written, they get lawsuits all the time. They pull drugs all the time and the industry survives. What is it about vaccines they don't want to just sit on the same playing field as drugs? Honestly, ask yourself that. And if they push back against this, Jeffrey, the world is changing. We keep talking about all the wins. This is massive. Can you imagine if we managed to see the 86 Act taken down and liability put back on the manufacturers so that vaccines enter a free market system, which is the heart of how America works, how a republic works, how a democracy works. It's amazing we're in this position, but, prayers and everybody, you should be ringing your representatives off the hook that if you do not support this bill that Rand Paul's put forward, then I will never trust you again and I will never vote for you again.